So imagine you're just sitting at a red light on a Tuesday morning. You're surrounded by all the usual mundane traffic like minivans, delivery trucks, maybe a hybrid car, silently idling right next to you.
Yeah, just your typical boring commute.
Exactly. But the sound coming from the machine underneath you, I mean, it sounds literally like a Formula One car winding up on the starting grid.
Oh, it's wild. It's this high-pitched mechanical scream that just, well, it turns every single head at the
It
intersection.
really is a completely intoxicating acoustic theater. There's just something primal about hearing an engine spin up that fast. It promises pure, unadulterated performance.
Right, but then the light turns green. You roll on the throttle, you're expecting to launch forward like a rocket, and you're barely keeping pace with the minivan in the next lane.
Yeah, it's a huge reality check. So welcome to the beautifully complicated, highly demanding world of the Kawasaki Ninja ZX-4RR. We are so glad you're joining us for this deep dive today because we are cutting straight through the initial honeymoon phase hype.
We really are. I mean, the launch reviews for this bike were universally glowing. Journalists were praising Kawasaki for bringing back the golden era of the high-revving sport bike.
Those legendary 400cc screamers from the 1990s that everyone thought were just dead forever.
Exactly, but we wanted to know what happens when the cameras turn off, you know? What happens when you actually have to live with this machine every single day?
And to find out, we've taken your curated stack of sources, which includes professional track tests from Motorcyclist Online, incredibly detailed 3,000-mile owner logs from Reddit, and some very revealing dedicated Facebook failure groups.
Those groups are always eye-opening.
Oh, entirely. So our mission today is to deliver an unfiltered, comprehensive 3-month owner review of the ZX-4RR. We're going to explore that F1-style engine theater, the hidden mechanical gremlins owners are finding under stress, and the mandatory survival guide of upgrades that riders are making just to navigate their daily commute.
Because as the source material vividly illustrates, the fantasy of a screaming 400cc sport bike and the physical, mechanical reality of riding one are just entirely different experiences.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the absolute core identity of this motorcycle. We were talking about a 399cc inline-4 engine.
Right.
And the headline feature here, the engineering marvel everyone is talking about, is that it features a mind-bending 16,000 RPM redline.
Which is practically unheard of in modern street-legal motorcycles today. I mean, over the last decade, the industry has largely shifted towards twin-cylinder engines.
Yeah, they're just everywhere now.
Because twin cylinders are cheaper to manufacture, they have fewer moving parts, and they offer more accessible power lower in the rev range. But Kawasaki went the complete other direction. They engineered what the community lovingly calls a screamer.
And the highs of this specific engine configuration are stratospheric. Looking at the owner logs, riders constantly note that when you're up in those revs, at completely street-legal highway speeds, the exhaust note gives you this unmatched analog thrill.
It's totally visceral.
Right. You get to feel the rush of a MotoGP racer, feeling the engine absolutely howling beneath you without actually risking a felony speeding ticket.
It is a sensory overload in the best way possible. Like one reviewer put it, if you like revs, this bike is an absolute candy store. But yeah, and this is a massive caveat for anyone using this as a daily rider. If you like torque well, you're going to need a lot of patience.
Let's dive into the reality of that torque deficit. Because the daily reality is that below 8,000 to 10,000 RPM, this bike is notoriously sluggish. There's practically zero low-end pulling power.
Yeah, and that's because of the engine's internal geometry. Small pistons moving very fast. They simply cannot generate substantial twisting force at low speeds.
So you literally have to keep the revs pinned high just to find any usable power for passing a car or safely getting away from aggressive city traffic. But I have to push back on the practicality of this for a second. If you're a rider transitioning from a torquey twin-cylinder, like a Yamaha R7 or a Ninja 650 bikes that just grunt and go, the second you twist the throttle, won't you be constantly frustrated on the ZX-4RR?
Oh, 100%.
Just trying to get from stoplight to stoplight. It feels like driving a high-end sports car, but being permanently stuck in 6th gear while trying to navigate an urban commute.
That is a perfect analogy, and looking at the 3-month reviews, a lot of new owners are initially deeply frustrated by exactly that. But there's a specific mechanical and regulatory reason why this is happening.
It's not just bad engineering.
No, not at all. It's not a fundamental flaw in Kawasaki's engineering. It's about strict compliance. The US version of the ZX-4RR comes heavily detuned straight from the factory just to meet modern emission restrictions.
Ah, so it's essentially being choked by its own software.
Precisely. To pass those stringent environmental regulations, the engine's computer is programmed to intervene. Even if you twist the throttle wide open, the electronic throttle bodies physically will not open all the way.
Wow.
Furthermore, the fuel mapping is incredibly lean at the bottom end, meaning it's literally starved of gasoline. The bike is restricted from giving you the physical power it was actually engineered to produce.
Because the factory setup leaves the bike feeling so restricted and sluggish off the line, the owner community hasn't just complained, they've formed a consensus.
Oh yeah, they took action.
If you look across the forums and the Reddit threads, owners have universally agreed on a strict 3-month survival guide. These are necessary upgrades just to make the bike behave the way it fundamentally should.
It has basically become a rite of passage for ZX-4RR owners. You buy the bike, you bring it home, and you immediately start ordering parts to fix the factory's compromises.
Here's where it gets really interesting. First up on that survival guide, addressing that brutal lack of torque. Since the engine won't give you pulling power naturally, riders are artificially creating it through mechanical advantage. The most universally recommended community mod is swapping out the stock sprockets to a 5.230T gearing setup.
Yeah, and by changing the ratio between the front sprocket attached to the engine and the rear sprocket attached to the wheel, you're essentially shortening the gearing.
Which forces the engine to spin up fast.
Exactly. It forces it into its happy place, that high RPM power band, much faster at lower road speeds. It artificially manufactures that missing low-end acceleration,
making the bike significantly punchier and more responsive from stoplight to stoplight.
Huge difference for daily riding.
And to fix the heavy restrictions, owners are also overwhelmingly pointing to a specific exhaust replacement, the Yoshimura AT2 slip-on.
That's a very popular one.
And looking at the specs, it's not just for the brand name, you know. The stock muffler on the ZX-4RR is essentially a massive 9.5-pound metal anchor hanging off the side of the bike.
Yeah, it's heavily baffled to meet noise regulations.
Right. So the AT2 sheds almost 5 pounds of dead weight from the bike.
Which is a massive reduction for a lightweight sport bike where every single pound dictates handling. It's constructed in the USA from stainless steel with a carbon fiber end cap, bringing the exhaust weight down to just 4.9 pounds.
That's incredible.
But beyond the weight, it's acoustically tuned. Unlike cheaper, obnoxious shorty exhausts that just blast raw noise and drone in your ears on the highway, the AT2 uncorks that 16,000 RPM wail gracefully.
So it actually sounds good, not just loud.
Right. It gives you a throaty, bassy symphony at idle, and this smooth, feral scream at the top end.
And as a visual bonus, the intense heat cycles from the engine turn those stainless steel headers a beautiful bronze color.
Always a nice perk.
But dropping the exhaust weight and changing the gearing doesn't solve the core issue of the computer artificially restricting the engine.
No, the physical modifications only go so far. Combining these mods with an ECU or engine control unit, Flash is an absolute prerequisite.
So they have to rewrite the software.
Exactly. Sending the bike's computer off to a tuning shop to be flashed physically rewrites those restrictive factory fuel maps. It tells the software to stop intervening.
So when you twist the grip, it tells the throttle bodies to open a full 100%.
Right, and it delivers the proper fuel mixture.
Yeah.
That software rewrite is what finally unlocks the bike's full 80 horsepower potential.
But there's a dark side to forcing an engine to live at 16,000 RPM. When you have that much metal moving, that violently, physics eventually collects a toll, and we're seeing that toll clearly documented in the owner failure logs.
Yeah, the mechanical reality sets in. When an engine spins that fast, the internal stresses, the heat, and the high-frequency vibrations transfer through the chassis are just immense.
Looking at the 3,000-mile owner logs, the first major reliability issue that pops up repeatedly is the valve cover gasket leak.
Yes.
Specifically, owners are finding engine oil weeping from the front left corner of the cylinder head cover on the rider's left side.
What's fascinating here is that when mechanics actually tear the engine down, they discover it isn't a failed or torn rubber gasket at all.
Wait, really? It's not the gasket?
Nope. It's an assembly flaw originating right on the factory floor. The issue is that the factory torque specs on that specific front left bolt are highly inconsistent.
Wow, so it's just loose.
Yeah, the bolt was either never tightened enough during manufacturing, or the engine's intense vibrations cause it to back out, and that allows pressurized oil to seep past what is actually a perfectly fine seal.
Now, fixing a loose bolt sounds like a simple afternoon project, but the architecture of the ZX-4RR turns it into a total nightmare.
It's awful.
Owners are reporting that you can't just reach in with a wrench. You have to completely remove the gas tank, unbolt and take out the massive air box, and unplug and remove the ECU.
All of that just to create enough physical clearance to fit a torque wrench onto that single bolt.
It is an incredibly labor-intensive teardown. Riders are spending 4 hours in their garage dismantling the top half of their motorcycle for what is ultimately a 5-second fix.
Right, just turning a wrench a 1/4 inch to re-torque the bolt to spec.
But if crucial engine bolts are rattling loose, it begs the question, what else is the vibration affecting?
A lot, as it turns out.
Yeah, the logs detail numerous complaints about high-frequency structural vibrations. Because the inline force spins so fast, it sends an intense buzzing resonance through the frame.
And this active vibration physically unscrews fairing screws and frame bolts over time. Owners emphasize that you really have to do meticulous pre-ride checks and keep a bottle of blue Loctite thread locker handy at all times.
There is also the reality of cosmetic maintenance. The extreme thermal load from running a compact engine at 15,000 RPM oxidizes the factory stainless steel exhaust headers to a dull, muddy brown incredibly quickly.
It's a huge aesthetic complaint. Daily riders are finding they have to get down on their hands and knees and polish the pipes with Autosol metal polish every 3 months just to keep the bike looking decent.
But, while polishing headers and chasing loose plastic fairing bolts are frustrating annoyances, there is a much more severe mechanical issue documented in these failure groups.
Yeah, the really scary one.
The gearbox nightmare. Specifically, catastrophic issues with the factory quick shifter.
Right. And a quick shifter, in theory, is a premium race-bred electronic feature. It's a sensor linked to the shift lever that detects when you want to change gears.
So momentarily cuts the engine's ignition just for a few milliseconds so the internal gears unload.
Exactly, allowing them to slide seamlessly into the next slot without you ever having to pull the clutch lever or close the throttle.
When it works, it's magic. But on the ZX-4RR, owners are reporting terrifying false neutrals, particularly when shifting aggressively between 3rd and 4th gear.
It's super dangerous.
You kick the lever up to shift, and instead of engaging the next gear, the transmission just spins freely in a void. It leaves you with 0 engine braking and 0 power.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the underlying physics, it reveals a serious flaw in how Kawasaki's electronics interface with the mechanical gearbox under extreme stress.
So what's actually happening inside?
Well, under hard track use, or if the rider makes a lazy, non-committed shift with their foot, the stock quick shifter parameters are flawed. The millisecond timing of that ignition cut is just slightly off.
And what happens when that timing is off?
The gears are still under massive engine load when they try to force their way into engagement. That creates a violent mechanical shockwave that travels directly through the transmission.
Oh, that sounds expensive.
It is. This physical jarring literally shakes the tiny metal circlips, those retaining rings that hold the gears in place on their shafts until they just snap off.
And when a circlip lets go inside a transmission spinning at 14,000 RPM,
it leads to catastrophic failure. We're talking about metal fragments destroying gears and requiring a complete multi-$1,000 engine rebuild.
That is absolutely terrifying for a daily rider. To survive this, the community has had to engineer their own preventative solutions.
They really had no choice.
Serious track riders are physically opening their transmissions to install aftermarket detent spring upgrades, usually from companies like Spears Racing.
Right. Think of a detent spring like the click wheel on a combination lock. It's the mechanism that forces the internal shift drum to click firmly and decisively into the next gear and stay locked there, rather than floating dangerously between gears.
And alongside the physical spring, they're using that ECU flash we mentioned earlier to program custom, highly precise quick shifter cut times to ensure the gears are fully unloaded before shifting.
Essentially saving the transmission from tearing itself apart.
So if we look at the whole picture, you have an engine that requires an immediate computer flash and a mechanical gearing change just to pull away from a stoplight.
Yep.
It leaks oil because the factory assembly was inconsistent. It vibrates its own screws out onto the highway. And if you aren't hypervigilant, the quick shifter will grenade the transmission.
It's a lot to take on.
Given all of that, why are the 3-month and 1-year reviews from owners overwhelmingly, passionately positive.
It all comes down to a matter of mechanical necessity and the absolute brilliance of the chassis. When an engine provides practically zero low-end torque, you cannot rely on the motor to rocket you out of a corner if you overbrake and slow down too much.
You literally have to carry your momentum.
You must. And to allow riders to carry momentum safely, Kawasaki had to outfit this 400cc bike with a chassis and suspension setup that rivals a modern 1000cc superbike.
That makes perfect sense. The premium suspension isn't a luxury feature here. It's a survival tool to make up for the engine's lack of grunt.
Precisely.
If the engine is the frantic, screaming heart of the bike, the chassis is like the noise-canceling headphones. It filters out all the road imperfections and panic, allowing you to focus entirely on exactly where you want to place the front tire.
The hardware they utilized is incredibly serious. Up front, it features a Showa SFF-BP fork. That stands for Separate Function Fork, Big Piston.
So instead of putting heavy springs and dampers in both sides of the fork, it isolates the spring in one fork tube and puts a massive damping piston in the other.
Exactly. This significantly cuts front-end weight and gives you incredibly smooth, predictable resistance when you slam on the brakes. Paired with a BFRC or balance-free rear cushion shock in the back, the 410-pound chassis stays brilliantly composed.
And the stopping power is just as high-end. It features dual 290mm rotors up front, gripped by radial mount calipers.
Those are fantastic brakes.
Right, because the calipers are mounted radially, meaning the bolts run parallel to the wheel radius rather than perpendicular. They are incredibly rigid.
And that rigidity allows for deep trail braking, which is that advanced technique of holding the brakes deep into the entry of a corner to compress the front suspension and sharpen the steering angle.
The suspension and brakes are so good that they honestly easily outpace the factory rubber. To really maximize that chassis, the first major livability upgrade owners make is ditching the stock Dunlop tires.
Yeah, those have to go pretty fast.
They're replacing them with German-made Continental Conti Attack SN2 tires. These were originally designed for supermotos, but on the ZX-4RR, they offer phenomenal edge grip.
Track riders are running them at 32 psi in the front and 30 psi in the rear, entirely without tire warmers, and they just instantly stick to the pavement.
But because the suspension allows you to carry so much corner speed and brake so violently hard, riders quickly run into an ergonomic issue. The stock vinyl seat is incredibly slippery.
Oh, it's like sitting on ice. Under heavy braking, riders find themselves constantly sliding forward, crushing themselves right into the gas tank.
Which severely disrupts your riding geometry. You end up putting all your body weight into your wrist to hold yourself back, rather than using your core.
So the essential fix here is upgrading to Canadian-made, marine-grade Louis Motor Designer seat covers. The suede-like material acts basically like Velcro for your riding pants.
It locks your lower body in place, allowing you to grip the tank with your knees and use your core to stabilize the bike.
Leaving your arms loose and relaxed to control the steering.
Okay, we have covered the screaming highs of 16,000 RPM, the sluggish reality of the torque deficit, the grueling mechanical gremlins, and the absolute must-do upgrades. So what does this all mean?
It's the big question.
Right. If you're listening to this, how do you evaluate the ultimate value of the ZX-4R?
It means you have to understand exactly the kind of relationship you're entering into. The ZX-4RR is not a passive, easygoing commuter bike. Yes, it achieves 42 miles per gallon, making it financially manageable as a daily rider, but it demands your absolute physical and mental involvement.
You cannot just be a passenger on this motorcycle.
Exactly that. It channels pure, old-school 600-class supersport energy. It requires screaming revs, constant and precise gear changes, and deep physical commitment to every single corner.
But crucially, it gives you all of that raw analog engagement without the terrifying intimidation factor of a 200-horsepower superbike.
And without the massive, crippling insurance bill that usually comes with those larger displacements.
Let's do a quick recap of our journey today. We started with the sheer allure of that F1-style engine scream and the reality of the mandatory Yoshimura AT2 exhaust upgrade to save weight and properly uncork the sound.
We explored the harsh reality of the missing low-end torque, which requires an immediate 5.2 or 3T gearing swap just to get off the line.
And we navigated the dark side of high revs, from the incredibly annoying valve-cover gasket teardown to the catastrophic quick-shifter shockwaves that require custom ECU cut times and Spears Racing D10 springs.
It really is a machine of high contrasts. It requires immense effort, both in the garage with a torque wrench and out on the road with your riding technique.
Whether you are actively shopping for a lightweight sport bike right now, or you're just endlessly curious about the state of modern motorcycle engineering, the Kawasaki Ninja ZX-4RR proves something really special.
It really does.
It proves that sometimes a vehicle's character is defined entirely by its quirks, its flaws, and the very specific demands it places on the rider. It's beloved because you have to work for it, and because of the premium suspension required to maintain its momentum, not in spite of those challenges.
It's a partnership. You put the effort in, you fix the factory compromises, and the reward is a dynamic, acoustic experience that you simply cannot get anywhere else in the modern market.
But I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We talked about how the US version of the ZX-4RR had to be heavily restricted, physically choked by its throttle bodies and fuel mapping straight off the showroom floor, just to pass modern emission standards.
Yeah, that was a huge hurdle for Kawasaki.
It took them an immense engineering effort just to make a 400cc inline-4 legally viable to sell in 2026. Considering where environmental regulations are heading globally, are we looking at the absolute last of a dying breed?
That's a profound question.
Will the high-revving, gas-powered 400cc Screamer soon be a relic of the past, an engineering marvel that future generations will only ever get to read about?
It's a sobering thought for anyone who loves the mechanical symphony of an inline-4 howling at 16,000 RPM.
It really is. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the beautifully flawed world of ZX-4RR. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and if you are out there riding, stay safe. See you on the next deep dive.